Hello, everyone. So, yeah. Okay, I went to the worst used car dealer ever. The worst one. I don't care how bad the ones that you've gone to were. This one trumps them all. And now I can't even say the word trumps without associating it with that asshole. Anyway, so to preface the story, just to give you a little background so you understand my background, um, I bought cars in just about every way possible. Um, I used to buy cars and flip them, usually for a profit, not always, but I've owned over 40 cars, maybe approaching 50, in the past 22 years. Um, and I really like cars. I hate working on them, but I really like them. So I I have a great deal of experience. I bought from auctions. I've um, bought private party, of course, and I've bought from dealerships. And I've actually gotten some pretty good deals at dealerships. Cars that lasted me years that, I paid $500 for. So, um, I've been thinking maybe it might be beneficial to get a second car just as a backup. Um, Something cheap, something I can just, you know, throw in the driveway and start up every once in a while, to make sure it keeps going and you know. But yeah, so I have a real affinity for the Panther platform. That's the Crown Victoria Mercury Grand Marquis Lincoln Town Car platform, and I, as much as I love my old cop car, it's not the most comfortable thing in the world. And it handles like it's on rails, and for someone who's a speed demon like I used to be, and someone who wants a sedan with the performance edge, it's great. But I'm getting older, my tastes are changing, and I'm kind of thinking of going in a new direction. As much as I love my old Crown Vic. So I started looking for a Mercury Grand Marquis and a specific year range. Um, I like the 2003 to 2000, what is it, 10 or something? I can't remember when they stopped making them. Um, and I happened to find a 2003 locally, and it was in an acceptable price range. And there are certain things um, that you can look for as a car buyer. Does the car have um, any blemishes? You know, dents, dings, you know, um, hail damage, rust, holes blasted in it, gunshot wounds. These are all things that you can use to um, get a better price. Now, sometimes they indicate, that a vehicle has been abused or whatever, but um, ultimately, uh, for me, as long as the outside is not too badly damaged, um, it's really the running gear that for me is the most important aspect. This car happened to have a few cosmetic blemishes, and I thought, okay, well, maybe that would give me a little wiggle room in terms of the price. Now, I haven't bought a car from a dealer in a long time because primarily um, At a certain point, dealers stopped haggling. And as a car buyer, an experienced one, when I go into any car buying situation, I want a deal. I want to haggle. You find a lot of dealers now, they they say it as though it's a positive thing. They say no haggle pricing. Well, that just means they're not willing to work with you on the price. They're not willing to give you the best deal. They state, they put it in granite that no, this is the price of the car and you cannot get a dime off of it. Well, then fuck you. I'll just go someplace else. Um, and so since this became a popular theme at dealerships, um, I I've stopped buying cars from dealerships, and I've gone primarily private party because usually when somebody's selling a car, there are reasons for it. Um, Sometimes those reasons can be bad. Um, there's something wrong with it, and they're just trying to get rid of something that's giving them a headache. Sometimes literally, and sometimes they inherited the car and they just want to get rid of it, or they have a new car that they're interested in, or whatever. You know, um, a lot of these are opportunities for you to haggle on the price. Um, so, because a dealership has a bottom line, whereas an individual, they might not necessarily have that kind of a hard line on it. You know, they might be willing to take a bit of a loss just to get rid of it. So, um, so I thought, okay, well, I was looking at pictures of it, and there was some red flags. And I'll show you the pictures here. But there were some minor cosmetic blemishes on the outside, but overall it looked okay, at least from the pictures. I thought, okay. Um, then I looked at the interior, and the interior looked dirty. Now, the pictures were not the clearest. Um, as you can see here, there's not a whole lot of um, detail in those pictures, but you can see some dirt. So I thought, okay, well, chances are that they got this car as a trade-in. They probably gave someone $200 off the price of another car, a car which is much more expensive, and they took this and they're looking to flip it for the most amount of money possible. Typical car dealer bullshit. Um, but then I looked at the picture of the engine compartment, and I noticed some leaves on the inside of the engine compartment. I thought, that's weird. Why would a dealer not clean out those leaves? It's the easiest thing in the world to do, you know. Um, Not every car dealer has the resources, I guess, or the ability to fully detail an engine, to make it look shiny and stuff. Not all of them want to put that much work into it. But to leave leaves, which can easily just be removed on the inside of the engine compartment, um, seemed somewhat unprofessional to me. And it raised a red flag. Right. So, with all this in mind, I called the dealership and I said, um, are you negotiable at all on your prices? And the guy said, oh yeah, yeah, when you show up, people will be really nice and this and that. And I'm like, okay. Um, I certainly hope they would be nice, you know. Um, but it seems like a strange thing to say. But I thought, dealership's not too far away. I'll go and check out the car anyway, despite the red flags and despite the rather odd statement from the guy who answered the phone. So today, I go down there and find the place relatively easily. Pull in, and there was a guy outside. He was taking pictures of another car, and he approached me. He seemed personable. Um, wasn't rude or anything. And, he did the usual "can I help you" thing, and I said, yeah, I want to look at that car. And I pointed at the car, that car. And he went and, you know, got the keys, and he was really nice, very accommodating. And the thing that struck me was how few cars there were on the lot, and the relative condition of the car that I was coming to look at wasn't exactly, well, let's just say that the condition was a lot worse than the pictures led me to believe. I don't think they doctored them at all. I just think that they were they were not entirely in focus. I mean, they're not the most detailed pictures. This guy was taking them with his cell phone, not with a proper camera. So, yeah. So, the car was dirty. I mean, it was filthy. I'm sorry I didn't take pictures. I wasn't in that mode. I was in, I'm a woman alone going to a dealership kind of mode. And I've gotten high pressure sales. It's always stressful going to a dealer because you never know what kind of people you're going to find there. I've had guys gang up on me at places like that, and the sad fact is that women are the 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 dealerships, the people, the sales people, they tend to do that with women. They gang up on them and try to pressure them, high pressure sale them into buying whatever they have. In some places there are tricks where they'll like take someone's keys, when they go to do a test drive for another car. They'll take the keys of the person's car, as like collateral or something. And it's like, fuck you, If anybody demands anything of you, I mean, I've had them, when you want to go out for a test drive, they take a copy of your ID. But that's pretty standard. Most places won't let you do a test drive unless you jump through that particular hoop. But as far as taking things from me and not returning them, no. If they demand your keys to your car, you walk the fuck away. I don't give a fuck how much you think you want that car that they have. There are plenty of other cars out there. What you need is reliable transportation. What you want is something else. So always keep that in mind. Always understand and realize that there are plenty of other cars out there. They may not be exactly what you want or in the color you want, but don't don't dig yourself into a hole with a fucking shady dealer, just to get what you want versus what you need. So I wasn't I was in self-protection mode, and okay, hard ass kind of mode. So not rude, but honest, and you know, I don't take any bullshit anymore. So, car was filthy. It was covered in a layer of dust. It is summer, and you know, in the summer it doesn't rain a whole lot here. Um, and it was their lot was a gravel lot. I've seen 1,000 of these places come and go in this particular location. This particular stretch of road, there are used car lots all over it, just littering every side of it. So, you know, I've seen a lot of places pop up and then disappear. So, that was a red flag for me. Because how hard is it to wash a car? You know, the big dealerships, the big boys, the ones with all the money, what do you see them doing every day? Like every day, they go out and they wash the cars. Almost every day, you know. But to make them look clean, to make them look as good as possible. Because what you're trying to do is sell something. You're not only selling the car, you're selling yourself, your business, your dealership. When you have a clean lot, professional looking people, clean cars, good products, it invites people and it makes them feel a little safer. You know, you seem less like some tweaking meth-head who just happened to buy a bunch of cars and lease a lot. Yeah. It's like a job interview. You're kind of selling yourself in a way, or a date. When you go out on a first date with someone, do you wear the shittiest clothes you have? If you do, you know, you might want to change your tactic. It's not about being dishonest. It's about looking presentable, looking appealing, being appealing. You know, on a first date, you don't dump all of your problems onto, you know, your date. You just talk. Share ideas, opinions, that kind of thing. Same thing in a job interview. You know, you have to have a certain hardness when you go into job interviews as well, but you don't show up, you know, tripping on acid or something, you know. You want to look professional. Well, it's the same thing with a business. Yeah. So that layer of dust, made me think cheap. These guys are cheap. And they don't care. More red flags. But there was the other side of me that said, however, I may be able to get this car cheaper because they may be desperate. If they're stupid enough to let their cars look like that, then, you know, they clearly don't care. So they may not be, you know, super hard on the price. And remember, I did call before and specifically ask, are you negotiable on the prices? Keep that in mind. So I'm thinking, okay, dirty car. I walk up to it. I open the door. It's a funny thing. My car, when I open the door, there's a crispness to it. It opens very easily. It doesn't have a lot of squeaks. It doesn't feel like it's been overly abused, despite having been a police car. When I opened the door of this car, I could hear, there was just that part of my brain that recognized, okay, this thing has something wrong with it. I don't know if it had been an accident or accidents. It was just that part of my brain that knew that knew this isn't right. And then I laid eyes on the interior. Yeah, I really wish that I'd taken pictures of that. Because I have never seen a more disgusting interior of a car that was not being sold by a meth head. This was Meth-head Motors, okay? I have never been to a dealership, no matter how small, that did not at least do a mild cleaning of their cars. Never been to a dealership that actually had stains, easily removed stains on the inside of a car. Now, given what they were asking for it, and given the fact that they're not a big dealership, I didn't expect the interior to be perfect. But these were stains that could just, you could have taken a rag that you had dampened 20 minutes ago and removed the dirt from the interior of this car. That's how superficial some of this dirt was. And certainly anyone with a brain who had ever tried to sell anything before would have done that. I don't super detail my cars before I sell them. I do wash them, you know. I do clean up the garbage. I don't generally have a lot of garbage in my cars anyway. That's just not how I roll. But you know, I try to make them look nice because I'm trying to sell it for money. It's like these guys, it's like they've never done it before. You know, or like the place is just a front for some kind of money laundering operation, you know? It's just, it's a really bad money laundering operation. It was just insane. I was like, why does this car look like this? And I saw a couple of the other cars on the lot, and they didn't look that way. But it seemed like, you know, maybe that's where they spent all their money. But the thing is, they were asking a premium price for this car. A price that if they had a brain in their fucking head and weren't all methed out, a price that would have said to them, we need to clean the car. We need to wash it. We need to try to make it smell nice. We need to demethify it. This car looked and smelled like it was owned by a meth head. No bullshit. People who smoke, they always have cigarette burns in their seats or on the floor or whatever. And it was clear that this car had been smoked in heavily. and someone tried to cover it up with some kind of, you know, scent. And, you know, when you get a lot of dirt, you get a lot of cigarette smoke, and you get somebody trying to cover it up with flowery scents, you get this whole melange of just really disgusting smell. And and I I looked at the inside of this car and I was shocked. I was like, what dealer, used car dealer even, would sell a car like this in this condition without cleaning it? They didn't even bother to vacuum the seats or the floor. The the dashboard had strange stains on it. Like on just on the front of the dashboard, you know. One of them looked like bird shit. And I was like, what is this? I'm like, they're asking, the sticker on the car says $2,000. They're asking $2,000. On the website where I saw it for 1,500. The guy that I was talking to, he didn't know what was going on. He didn't know what price it was. So I'm sitting in this thing and I'm like, this thing ain't worth $500 just from the smell alone. You know, the dirt on the car, the general we don't give a fuck atmosphere of the place, at least when it comes to this car. And like it looked like it was the worst car on the lot, but they were still asking that premium price for it. I mean, it's a Mercury Grand Marquis, an '03, a well-used '03. Any dealer in their right mind wouldn't even approach asking $1,000 for it. $750 maybe. So the guy runs in, brings me the keys, start the car up. 4.6 liter V8 is not supposed to sound like that. I mean, it just, and it wasn't hot rodded out. It was just rotted out. It was a clapped out car. I could tell that just when I started it. I've started and looked at 1,000 cars like it over the decades. And I was just shocked. They're asking $2,000 for this? For this fucking barrel of shit? And so I'm like, okay, I came all the way out here. I'm going to take it for a test drive. So I run it through all the gears to make sure that it will actually engage into each gear. Put my foot on the brake, it goes all the way to the floor, it's spongy as hell. And I'm like, oh god, of course that would be a problem. So I put the car in drive, take my foot off the brake, and let it kind of under idle, just go forward. And then I hit the brakes. The car goes like this. And it keeps going like this. And I'm like, oh Jesus Christ. It just kept getting better and better, you know. So I say, okay, well, and I check the fluids. Fluids seem fine. It looks like maybe somebody at some point had changed the fluids, because they didn't look burnt, or they didn't have any metal flakes in them or anything else, which surprised me. This guy's like, okay, well, if you want to take it for a test drive, we need to copy your license and you need to sign a form or whatever. And I'm like, okay, whatever. So we go into the meth lab slash office. From the outside, it looked pretty low rent. They had basically just taken, and you'll see it in the picture that I posted of the car. They took a piece of wood and just with that cheap lettering you get at any hardware store, they just spray painted the name of their business on there. I'm like, okay, yeah. When I went into the office, funny enough, the entire inside of it was lined in red flags. No, it was just, I walk in there and it's like a dungeon. It's tiny. And it looks like someone was trying to renovate it, but then they just gave up halfway through. There was literal, like, bare wood. Like they had just gone to the hardware store, bought whatever wood they could, or like, you know, a house had burned down and they just took whatever wood they thought they could use, you know, and just hastily kind of assembled it into like half-ass structures. I mean, it looked like it had been a meth lab on the inside. There was 3 people that worked there, apparently. There was a woman who made 0 eye contact with me, never smiled, never talked to the guy that I was dealing with, and she was just sitting there, you know, pushing papers around. And there was this guy. He looked about my nephew's age, so about 25. And he acted kind of like my nephew. He was laying actually on a couch, a meth couch, and they had a TV, of course. They had a TV, and he was sitting there, and he was fucking around on his phone or something, and he was just like watching stuff while laying on this couch. And I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, who the fuck is this guy? Well, the guy that I'm dealing with, he defers to this fucking guy, and this guy looked like a fucking meth head. No bullshit. He looked straight out of fucking Breaking Bad. And I was like, this place is sketchy as fuck. And I was like, oh, what am I doing? What am I doing? So, yeah. So I'm like, okay, whatever. I've come this far. That's usually when you know you're making a mistake. When you keep going, red flag, red flag, red flag. Oh, okay, I'll keep going. You know. It's like eventually you might find one of those red flags, you know, embedded in your chest. But so I'm like, okay, this guy maybe has seniority. Does a lady own it? I don't know, because neither of them, you know, made eye contact with me. They didn't acknowledge my existence at all. And I'm a potential paying customer. Not even a, oh, good morning, or a, hey, thanks for coming in. Nothing. I'm like, okay. This is the most laid-back, half-assed dealership that I've ever fucking been to. And I've been to some fucked up dealerships. So, the guy that was helping me before, we go out to the car, get in, I put the car in gear, we start to go. I'm checking the brakes, you know, the whole time to make sure that they actually function, and they seem to firm up a little bit. Who knows what the fuck problem that is. And start driving. The steering wheel is doing this. Like I let go of the steering wheel, and it's to the car's credit, despite how much it's been abused, it is continuing to go straight. So when you let go of the steering wheel, that car, a lot of cars, even mine, might tend to drift right or left or something. This one stayed straight. But the steering wheel itself was shaking all over the place from side to side. But the car wasn't doing anything. Jesus Christ. I rolled down the window, go to roll it back up, wouldn't roll up. I rolled down the other windows to check and make sure they work, and I rolled them back up. Then I rolled them down again. They wouldn't go back up. And I'm like, this thing's a fucking clapped out nightmare. But the guy, he came with me on the test drive. He's talking the whole time. I'm like, okay. Well, I can get a little. He's talkative. I can get a little more information out of him. And so I asked leading questions like, oh, was this car a trade-in, and this and that. And by the way, the stereo is like not plugged in. It's just kind of sitting out loose. And the place where the cigarette lighter is, and the cup holders are, the cigarette lighter has a mysterious green gel on it, which has fused it to the cup holders. I didn't want to touch it. I didn't even want to be in the same car with it. I'm like, why am I doing this? I guess for a story to put on YouTube. So the guy's talking and talking and talking, and he's telling me about this other Mercury Grand Marquis they have. And it's got low profile tires on it and the big rims. They're asking like, I don't know, $3,000 for that. He says it doesn't even run. On the website where I saw the Grand Marquis that I was test driving, yeah, that car, the non-running Grand Marquis, was plastered all over that place. You're only supposed to put up one ad. They had like 7 going all at once for each car. That fucking Mercury Grand Marquis, the one, not the one I'm driving, but the other one, it has some kind of half-assed cold air intake in it, and the fucking car doesn't even run. And they're asking $3,000 for it. I'm like, well, what if someone calls? What if someone drives all the way the fuck out there just to look at this car, which you've plastered all over this website, and it doesn't even fucking run? What kind of a message is that going to send? Not only to that person, but to all of their friends when they go back and say, you wouldn't believe what the fuck this place did. It's like they have no business sense at all. None. And the car's a complete pile of shit. And I'm kind of like, I'm kicking it in the guts, kind of putting the foot down. It's something that you want to do with cars to see how they react when you punch it. Some cars will, rise to the occasion and do what they're supposed to do, and some cars will go. That's what this car did. It took forever for it to get up and go, and it was a nightmare. And trying to shift, it was like, they have the indicators. Now in my car, it's really, you can feel it, when you shift. It's not a manual, it's an automatic, but when you shift from park to reverse or drive or whatever, it solidly goes into each gear. On this, it was like I had trouble finding which gear I was in. And this guy's telling me, no, actually, we bought the car from a dealer. They bought that clapped out pile of shit, which was probably a trade-in at this other dealership. And the dealership was like, you know what, this thing's a fucking grotesque nightmare. We can't put it on our fucking lot. So we're just going to sell it off at auction. So that's what happens. You get these new car dealers, they get in some shitty fucking trade-in that's, you know, an eyesore that they wouldn't put on their fucking lot in a million fucking years. And they just put it, you know, in the back, and then they sell it at some auction for some fucking idiot used car dealer to pay them for. And it's like, they couldn't have paid more than $100, maybe $200 for this thing. And they're asking $2,000, of course. So, and he's telling me he's got like 6 fucking kids, you know, and so he's got to be making that money. He's been working there for 3 weeks. He's never sold a car before. He's never worked on a car lot before. We all have to start somewhere, okay? I get that. But it went along with the whole thing. The inexperienced guy is the one doing all the work. You know? He seemed to know certain things about cars. So do I. But I'm not an expert. But I'd be a better salesperson than this guy. I can tell you that. Because I actually did it. For myself, for my own business. And, I mean, these assholes don't even have the common sense to, you know, wash the interior of the fucking car and maybe, you know, vacuum it out. It's like, Jesus Christ. And, so I'm like, this is just, and I'm like, this thing is just a joke, you know? I like the looks. I like things that have character. What that means is basically something that's a little, not beat up, but that, you know, has, maybe shows some age, you know, patina, that kind of thing. That appeals to me. And, so externally, this car kind of appealed to me in a certain way, you know? And, but the thing, it just ran like shit. There was some weird noise from the front end, you know, control arms or some shit, I don't fucking know. So we get the car back to the dealership, and I parked the car, and he's like, well, you know, because he, you know, it was like the steering wheel was, you know, going back and forth, and he's like, well, we'll look at the tires and stuff and see. Checked out all the tires. 3 of them were fine, roughly. But the one tire on the drive wheel, yeah, it was bald. They didn't bother to check that, because if they had, and if they were actually thinking, and actually thinking like a business owner, they would have thought, bald tire on the driving wheel, the wheel that has traction. It's not a posi traction rear end. Oh, somebody was doing burnouts with it. That's why it ran that way. Somebody at the fucking dealership probably, you know, oh, they got this clapped out car, they're not going to sell it on their fucking lot. Hey, let's go and do fucking donuts and burnouts and shit. Thereby making the car's condition even worse. Of course, when I got back, you know, I was punching it every once in a while. Of course, you punch it in this thing and you're not going anywhere. Well, I parked the car and I noticed this big waft of oil, the smell of oil. And again, I'm like, this car ain't worth $500. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, dude, this thing's a mess. This thing's a piece of shit. And he's like, oh, it's got a strong engine. No, it doesn't. My Crown Vic has a strong engine. This fucking thing is garbage. And I said, so how negotiable are you on the price? Remember? Negotiable. I called them. He said, oh, we're negotiable on all the prices. Yeah. He says, well, what does it say on the car? And he said, oh, it's $2,000 on the car. I said it was $1,500 online. He says, then that's what it is. And I'm like, really, dude? He didn't make the connection that somebody called saying, are you negotiable on the prices? No. And I was like, this is just a fucking joke. And just to fuck with him, I said, eh, it ain't worth $500. I wouldn't give you $500 for it. He's like, well, and that's when he's trying to get the sale, and he's like, oh, well, he wouldn't come down to 500. I'm like, it's not worth 500. But it's like he, and I'm like, who's this he? I didn't ask. I figured it was the fucking guy on the inside sitting there fucking around playing on the TV, laying on the fucking couch like a fucking 20-year-old do-nothing. I'm like, no. That asshole, that lazy fuck, can't be the fucking guy that this asshole was talking about. Can't fucking be. I'm betting it was. So, you know, part of me wants to mention the name of the dealership so that people can avoid it. Part of me's like, fuck it. It was Livengood Motors in Linwood, Washington. Livengood. Yeah. Spray painted on a cheap wooden board. Yeah, they're really living good. You go into their fucking office and it's like a fucking cave, you know, that's been torched on the inside and then hastily, you know, had structures built that are uneven and don't. Yeah. This is a situation of give a meth head money and a dealership, and this is what you get. I couldn't fucking believe it. So, that is, thus far, in 20 years of going to dealerships, that is by far the absolute worst dealership I have ever seen. The least professional dealership ever. Needless to say, they didn't get their sale. I can't imagine that they will, with the attitude that they displayed, all of them. Almost contempt for a customer. Certainly, they didn't value the intelligence of anyone who came there. If they did, they wouldn't have had the gall to put $2,000 on that pile of worthless fucking shit that I drove. This is what fucking Yelp is for, and this is what all those other review sites are for. To protect people who don't necessarily have the necessary knowledge to protect themselves. And I'm not calling people stupid, you know, it's just not everybody has the drive that I have, the interests that I have, you know, having an interest in cars, or the experience that I have. And that's kind of why I make videos like this. to kind of try to point things out. If I could, if it were physically possible for me to do so, I would go with every inexperienced car person to every encounter that they went to try and buy a car, so I could give them the best advice possible. In this particular situation, my best advice is to, one, never go to a dealership alone. I can do it because I have a great deal of experience. I used to wheel and deal. I've dealt with these assholes before, trying to get the hard sell and all this other shit. I'm impervious to that shit. I am fucking kryptonite to these motherfuckers. But unless you've got decades worth of experience in doing this shit, never go to a dealership alone. Especially if you're wanting to do financing or you're dealing with a large amount of money. Never spend your limit. Okay? Let's say you have $2,000 to spend on a car. We're going to keep it simple and keep it within the used car range. Okay? You don't offer them, you don't say to them, I have $2,000. You look at this price on the sticker, or the price that they quote you, and if they quote you two different prices, you remember the lowest one, and you quote the lowest one back to them. But when you see the price, you cut it in half. No bullshit. There are countless videos on YouTube that would tell you to do the exact opposite. They would say, well, if you lowball them, they'll drive you away. It's like, no. If they're smart, they'll deal with you. They'll go, well, let's say the $2,000 range, you cut down to $1,000. Okay, you pick the car apart. You tire kick, and you say, well, it's got this and it's got this, and I noticed a little tick in the engine. And there are a lot of engines that just naturally have a tick, especially after a certain mileage. You pick it apart. And you say, well, that's the justification for the $1,000. And then if they're smart, they'll go, well, how about $1,500? They'll kind of meet you in the middle, or they might do 17. And you go, well, and you back and forth, back and forth. In your mind, you have to create a number that is between the 1,000 and the 2,000. Closer to the 1,000. Maybe even less, depending upon the car. When you get your impressions of that, you put that number in your mind, and you keep it there. And you set that as a limit. If you go over that, you think, well, I have gotten great cars that lasted years. Again, I'll say it. I've got great cars from dealerships that have lasted me years for $500. You're constantly testing them to see where their limit is. If they're like, oh no, God, no. Either one, they're stupid enough to have a lot of money in a pile of shit, okay? Or two, they just bought the car. The longer the car is on the lot, the more drive they have to get it off the lot, okay? So if you go online and you see an ad and you see it keeps sitting there for months, sometimes years. I've seen cars for sale on lots for years. Pay attention to that, because you might be able to get a really good deal. Sometimes you stumble into one, like I have. But these are all things that you learn, you figure out. And, if you go to a place where they say, we don't haggle, we're not that kind of dealership, walk the fuck away. Because they They are completely inflexible. And I never give a goddamn inch to people who are inflexible. I don't know, maybe it's the Italian, Irish, and German in me. But, yeah, just don't ever give them their asking price. Ever. Not when you're dealing with used cars. Hell, even fucking new cars. But, yeah, I have to say, though, it's fun standing up, not saying a word, and walking the fuck out of a fucking dealership. I've done it more than once, and there's such a great degree of satisfaction in it. I've had guys chase after me like, where are you going? Oh, the car. You want the car so much. No. I want a car, or I need a car. I don't necessarily need yours. And that's the game. You have to take their inflexibility and fucking hang them with it. Always, always be prepared to walk the fuck away. Because again, there's always another fucking car out there. You may need a car, but you don't necessarily need that one. I didn't need this one. And I got to fuck around in a clapped out car. You see what happens. You know? It's like, how do you get a date with someone? Well, you gotta ask them. You know? You gotta try. So, you know, there are people, if you've made mistakes in the past, or maybe just recently, you know, with car buying, don't beat yourself up too much for it, because it happens to all of us. It's happened to me, and it can happen to the most experienced people. You know, it tends to happen less the more experience you have. But you know, just when you're driving a regular car, one that's in generally good condition, or you're riding in one, note how it feels. You know, a good running car doesn't shake, it doesn't shimmy, it doesn't, you know, it's not sitting there and blah 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 blah. The engine should be quiet. Sometimes there are quiet engines and the car is still doing this. It's because, you know, maybe there's a vacuum leak or something like that. There's something wrong with it. That's the engine telling you there's something wrong with it. Just like the suspension when you stop. Okay, this car's a boat, but it's not that much of a boat. You know, we're not riding on the fucking ocean here. A car should not be doing this when you stop. Not for, you know, 25 fucking seconds after you stop. So, you just gotta be smart, because you only have so much money. You know? That's why when you go out to buy a car, you don't take all of your money. You take a percentage of it. Because if you get a shitty car, it's only a percentage of your money that you're losing, rather than all of your money. That's my experience. And that was my experience this time. Yeah. I swear I could teach a course. But, I mean, what's interesting is before, how I used to look before I began my transition, I got treated differently. People now, generally men, talk down to me. They treat me like I'm stupid, like I know nothing at all. There are certain advantages in that you can switch it up on them. You can turn it around and hang them with it, you know, by saying, well, actually, you know, this is this and that's that, and I know what the fuck I'm doing, and you can't fucking pull any shit on me. Because then they go, oh. So, like I say, you know, the whole transition thing, it's really, it has its advantages. I can disarm people. They feel like I'm less of a threat looking like this. They don't expect me to know what I know. And you get to see two completely different perspectives of life and how you're treated by people. So, it's interesting. Anyway, I guess that's it. Those assholes, I sincerely hope that they don't sell that car to someone who doesn't know what they're doing. But someone who doesn't know what they're doing would be the only kind of person that would buy that car. Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody.